Hello.
Thank you so much for making the time.
No problem. It's my pleasure to do this for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about basically, the challenges you overcame as a adult, a student, and in the United States. Education here is very expensive, and nonetheless, there's always challenges that are not necessarily financial. And I think there's a bunch of us, including myself, that do have challenges and end up graduating adult, further down the road
Yeah.
than most kids that just come out of high school and get it done.
Right.
So where are you from?
I am from Boston, Dorchester to be exact, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. And are your parents from the U.S.?
No, both of my parents are actually from Haiti. So they immigrated here to the U.S. Both of my parents, they met in Boston, and thankfully they both decided to have me, and here I am.
Oh, that's wonderful. Did any of your parents go to college?
No, neither one of my parents went to college. I don't even think they went to high school. I think both of my parents, the most education that they got was the middle school age education in Haiti. When they came to the U.S., I think they took English classes, just of course to kind of assimilate into the American culture and be able to communicate better. Even that was a challenge. I remember my mom tells me a story. She already had family here in the U.S. when she came, but when she was 18, a lot of the kids in the neighborhood used to make fun of her, and they would say things to her that she didn't know what they were because, of course, she didn't know the language. And so her cousins actually used to defend her and fight for her because some of the things that they were saying were really offensive. Yeah.
It's hard to hear. Okay. So, was SNHU your only attempt to go to school?
No, that was not my first attempt. In fact, it was, I believe, my fifth attempt, actually. So I graduated from high school in 2003 from John D. O'Brien School of Mathematics and Science in Roxbury, Massachusetts. And so I applied to several schools, and it wasn't until the end of my senior year that I really decided to apply to a HBCU, which is a historically black college and university. So I applied to Morehouse, Clark Atlanta, Morris Brown College, and I got into all three, and I made it into Morehouse. And so one of my librarians, she said, you should really go to Morehouse. She said, Morehouse is the place for you. Like, you fit the mold of what a Morehouse man should be. Like, you have that personality. And so I stuck with that, and it was the best decision I could have ever made to go to Morehouse. However, it was at the wrong time, unfortunately. But it was a really great feeling because my younger brother came with me when I went for orientation. My mom came with me. And actually, one thing that actually really touches my heart. So when I was going to Morehouse, I kind of started meeting a lot of other folks that were going to Morehouse at the same time. So there was a group of people, like men from Boston, that were going to Morehouse. And so we kind of connected. There were some people that actually went to my high school that were going as well. But there was another guy, actually, his name, he was actually Haitian, his name was James, and he lived right down the street from me. And his parents, he was actually Haitian as well, so his parents kind of, sort of the same situation in regards to education. His parents really didn't understand why he was going to Atlanta for school. They didn't understand the concept of Morehouse, the historically black college. So they didn't go with him, and they decided not to go with him to Atlanta to do the orientation. And most parents do. There's an entire program for parents to bring their kids and kind of send them off. And his parents decided not to come with him. So my mom was like, yeah, he can come with us, and I'll be his mom for that time. And that he was so happy to do that, and I think it was just really great. And ever since then, he's always been so indebted to us for that because he really appreciated that. But My brother, it was really great to inspire him, to show him that I was going to the school and to kind of understand that dynamic. So one of the greatest things that happened when we got to Morehouse, there were two guys that were starting in my class that my brother had played basketball with at the Boys and Girls Club down the street from our house. And that lit him up to see the connection between our community, you know, his older brother going to the school, and then these other guys that he plays, you know, basketball with that he possibly looks up to as well. I think there are other people outside of your family that you look up to, and I thought it was a really good view for him to see that, because he, you know, he was so into basketball, and to see that these guys were also so serious about basketball, but they're also serious about going to school, I think that really resonated with him. So went to Morehouse for a year. Unfortunately, especially because my family I'm the first generation going into college. I really didn't get any information from my advisor in regards to the financial aid process. Of course, my parents don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about that. So in going into getting financial aid, we got a PLUS loan. And at the time, I had no idea what that meant. All I knew was that my, school was funded. I was able to go to school and things were great. My parents didn't have much money. Actually, they couldn't hardly send me money while I was actually at school. So a lot of the students, they kind of were like really well off middle class students. So they were able to get things. And I mean, I could even remember sometimes just eating peanut butter when I was hungry because I couldn't afford anything else. And I got sick actually at some point because I ate too much peanut butter. And I remember I joined the Morehouse Glee Club, and I needed to have a blazer. I didn't have a blazer at the time. So I asked my mom, to send me one, and I think she did her best to find one, and it wasn't quite the blazer that I needed, but I understood that she did what she had to do. But within that year, things were really great, like I said, but it was the wrong time. So it wasn't until I had to apply for financial aid again for the next following year, for the second year, and I got denied. Didn't know why I got denied. Come to find out, I was in default for my loan for the first year, because with a PLUS loan, you have to pay during your matriculation. There's no way that my family would have been able to pay towards a loan during my matriculation. And I think that was the most misleading thing for us at that time. So the second year, I had no financial aid to start at Morehouse. However, I was determined to get in, and I still went back to Atlanta. I stayed with one of my friends. In fact, I stayed with James in his dorm room, and he was committed as I was to try to get me back into school. The first year, my mom co-signed for me for my financial aid. The second year, because we had defaulted, she could not, because she was also in default. I would have to get someone else to co-sign for me. So naturally, that other person would be my father. So I go to my father to ask him about co-signing for me, and he was a hard no. And that hurt me a lot. And I think for a little while he may have thought about it. I think he discussed it with a few people, and he was more concerned about his credit than the possibility of his son, his first child going to school, graduating, and kind of creating a new outlook for, generations to come for our family. And that truly hurt me a lot. And he allowed other people to say, what is this gonna do to your credit? How is this gonna affect you? Is he gonna pay it back? And I just couldn't understand that, and even to this day I don't. May he rest in peace, but that bothered me a lot. That this was something that I was truly, truly committed to do. there were men at Morehouse that were there. They were, inspiring to see a group of Black men that were eager to learn and help each other. That was really good to see, especially because of the messages that Black men see every day, that they're not worth anything, and that they're a statistic and they're not gonna grow up to amount to anything. So it was really great to have the mentors that we had at Morehouse, the speakers that we had at Morehouse, and just the other students that really just kind of inspired each other. So I went to Morehouse that second year, stayed with James in his dorm room, and I tried everything that I could to try to get financial aid or funding for the second year. In fact, I planned on applying for financial aid with my dad as a co-signer anyway, without his authorization. However, what happened was I did not know his social security number. And when I tried to get it, my sister told on me. And so that's truthful and honest. And so that didn't go so well. And I was like, okay. So the second option was to see what the Alumni Association can do. So the Massachusetts Alumni Association with Morehouse had a lot of influence, and so I reached out. I had reached out to the financial aid on so many occasions in regards to what can be done, and they were not trying to hear it. When I reached out to Massachusetts Morehouse Alumni Association, spoke to the president, we had a conversation, he understood. He made his calls within the administration at Morehouse College, and then that's when I got a call to come meet. And so they tried their best and had their conversations. However, at the end of the day, there was just nothing that they could do because of the PLUS loan that hadn't been in default, that had nothing to do. So after trying and trying and trying, I was defeated. Couldn't go back to Morehouse. So I decided that I would stay in Atlanta, start working, and maybe see what I can do. And I ended up staying at my homegirl's apartment, who I went to high school with. She went to Spelman, which is right next to Morehouse. And I stayed in her living room for a little while. Eventually she got sick and tired of me, naturally. And I found an apartment, stayed in an apartment for a while, and just wasn't making enough money to pay rent, and eventually got evicted. And at that point, I was completely defeated and had to go back to Boston. And I went back to Boston, and my next option was like, okay, I need to go back home, start working, try to get back into school, maybe go back to school in Boston. So I started working at my old job. I was doing security and was doing that for a while, and then ended up going to UMass Boston. So went to UMass Boston, did quite a few classes there. I was actually doing really well. And then after a few years, in 2006, my brother passed away. And he was murdered waiting for the bus stop to come home. And that, I'm not really the type of person, I'm not a really emotional person, so, and I don't really allow things to affect me. And I can say this honestly now, it really didn't affect me. However, at that time, I was going to school, I was going to work, and I can say then that, I had a legitimate excuse to say my brother passed away, and this is affecting my ability to move forward with school. But to be honest, to be truthfully honest, I think I was burnt out from working, trying to find time to study, trying to be social. I was a kid, so the concept of trying to be social, trying to work, trying to get the things that I wanted, like my car, and studying and going to school weren't really at the top of my priority list. And so I think at that time I had a good excuse and a good cop-out to say, you know what, let's just stop going to school. And that's what happened. I stopped going to UMass Boston. I dropped out and started working. And every time anyone asked about it, I blamed it. My brother passed away. And although my brother did pass away, I think there was already a buildup prior to that I was just kind of like fed up with school. I didn't understand why I needed to do it anyway at that time. And then eventually I moved to Atlanta, back to Atlanta on my own because I just wanted to get away from Boston. So I started classes at Northeastern University, which is also based in Boston. They had an online system, an online class situation. So I started there, and then once again, my priorities were not in order. And I just couldn't do it. And after that, I went to University of Phoenix for a short period of time. And once again, honestly, with University of Phoenix, I just didn't like their setup, their program. I didn't like how it just didn't work for me. And so after that, I was just done for quite a few years. And then eventually when I got a little bit older, this had to be, I was probably about 25. I was like, okay, I need to get back to school. I really need to focus and do my thing and go to school. By that time, I didn't have any access to financial aid because I was in default to all of these schools that I had gone to. So I had to pay and have a payment plan to get back to school. I didn't have the money for that. So it wasn't until, 2019. So it wasn't until the end of 2016, the beginning of 2017 that I got really serious about saying, okay, you need to go back to school. And so when I started making the moves to try to get back to school, I realized that I was in default for these loans and there was nothing that I could do to get back into school. So I felt defeated, right? I was working for Marriott International. I started working there when I was in Atlanta, and I worked there for about 5 years. They're the ones that actually transferred me to DC for promotion. I separated them from them shortly after I started in 2016, and I felt like when I left there, because of course I had no degree, I was like, damn, what am I gonna do? Like, I need to find a job. And I had, I really wanted to get an IT. I couldn't get an IT, don't have the experience, I don't have a degree. I felt like I was useless as a person because like I had nothing. Like I have nothing to show for the time that I spent. And my plan while I worked for Marriott was to eventually get back to school. I had all these plans to get back to school, but I had these ideas about going back to school, but I never made the plan. And I think that's what it was. Idea versus a plan, and I never made the plan. And so once I separated from Marriott, that's when I was like, okay, you need to get back into school because you need to be able to show for what you've been doing for all of these years. And so I had extensive customer service experience. I could get a customer service job anywhere. So what ended up happening is I ended up getting a lump sum from a mediation between Marriott and I, and with that money, I used it to pay for my first class at Southern New Hampshire University. And so my first class was a human relations class, and so that was, I think, summer of 2017. Later that year, I received a random call from, I forget what they call it, student aid, federal student aid, and they called to say that they wanted to consolidate on my student loans, and by doing that would take me out of default, and I wouldn't, and I said, okay, well, if that takes me out of default, does that mean if I applied to school, I'd be able to make a deferment, I'd be able to get it? Like, yeah. So I said, okay. I was a little skeptical. They kept calling me. I was like, this is really weird, why they keep calling me. So they said, yeah, this is what you need to do. I was like, okay, well, send me the information via email. That's how I like to communicate anyway. Send me the instructions via email, I'll do it. I thought, no, we'd like to do it with you on the phone. I was like, okay, these people are really serious. I don't know what's going on. So anyway, they called me around 7:45 while I'm at work, and they walked me through the entire process to kind of consolidate all of my student loans. sure enough, several weeks later, it had been approved. And then in addition to that, I was able to get financial aid to get into Southern New Hampshire University. And I was floored because I was like, okay, this is really happening. This is happening for real. Now the only thing was I owed Southern New Hampshire University probably about $1,000 or so. I think a little bit more than that. In order for an older class that I had taken that I hadn't paid for. And so the financial aid that I got accepted was only available for the classes that I would take after that. So I had to pay for that balance before I could register for any classes because that financial aid couldn't be applied to that outstanding balance. So I paid off the balance and then I said, okay, well, I need to be able to pay this money. I don't have that money. So I reached out to one of my really close friends and I said, here's what's up. And without any hesitation, he said yes. And so in 2017, he paid that balance off for me and I ended up paying back for him about a month later. And I got back into school. And ever since then, I have been knocking it out and I graduated just a month ago. And it was a great feeling. And I don't think everyone needs to go to school. But I think there are those, for me personally, I really wanted to because my parents came from Haiti, with this idea of a new beginning and wanting to create a different life for whatever they decided to do. And of course, they ended up having kids when they got here. And so I wanted to be able to show that their sacrifice did not go in vain, you know what I'm saying? So I wanted to create a different path for, our legacy and our future. And so statistically, whenever someone is a bit more educated, their offspring are a little bit better off. And so that's what I want to do. And so keeping on with the momentum, as long as I have financial aid, I will continue on to grad school. And in the back of my head, I say, wow, I have a lot of student debt right now. And then even when I'm done with grad school, I'm gonna have a shit ton more of student debt. And honestly, the way that I feel, I'll worry about that when I'm done. Of course, it sticks in the back of my head, but I just figure I want to make sure that I'm creating a better, making myself available to more opportunities, and then just kind of being an inspiration to others. And then once I get to that bridge, we will figure out what we'll do. Of course, I have some plans. I kind of decided I might want to go into the government that will kind of assist. There are some programs out there, but yeah, those are the those are the paths and the journeys that I took to get to where I am now. And I am happy and excited that it took all of that, because now it has created more value for me. The diploma means much more to me than the idea of just graduating and just being considered an expert in my field. It means that I am making my father proud, my grandmother, and my little brother, may they all rest in peace, and that I am inspiring others to do the same.
Very good. And that's what I was going to ask you for next. So I think you pretty much covered. First of all, of course, you are an inspiration. But I want to ask you, as they say, we're not spring chickens anymore.
Right.
Realistically speaking, right? We feel good and we're healthy, thankfully. But at our age, or your age, you're younger than I, what do you gain
What do you feel you gained? I mean, there are other people who graduated 20 years ago when you and I were supposed to graduate from college, and we're just making that happen. So those folks are 20 years ahead of us in experience and all.
I think that's a really good question, and I think the difference between me graduating now and someone graduating 20 years ago is the experience that I obtained of working. And so if I had been in school several years ago and went through the whole 4 years and then went to master's and stuff like that and didn't actually have any work experience, I think my relationships with my professors may have been a little bit different. However, considering that I have had such an extensive work experience at this point, going back to SNHU, my viewpoint of interacting with my professors was sort of the same way I kind of compared it to interacting with my manager or my boss at work. And so there are a lot of things that your boss may tell you to do that you don't really agree with. And a student would feel a little bit entitled to say, this is complete crap, blah, blah, blah. They're going back and forth with their professors. And so I thought to myself, maybe I should treat my professors the way I would treat my manager. I wouldn't disrespect my manager or go off with my manager because I'd be a little bit concerned that I might lose my job. So I should probably treat my professors the same way. Although they don't have the power to say, okay, get out of my class, but they still have the power to provide a little bit more guidance to what I'm doing in class and provide a little bit more feedback. And so, my work experience allowed me to have a better professional relationship with my professors.
All right, so we're gonna wrap it up in there, and then we're just gonna film a couple clips with the other two questions I have, which might be the ones that we're gonna use for social media.
Okay, cool.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.